Now let's talk about these PPPs and the stimulus money. Let's start with the PPPs, because there are a lot of folks that are listening that own businesses that might have gotten, 10, 20, 30, maybe more, thousands of dollars from the government writing checks. What happens tax time with that? And when do people have to pay that back?
Great question. There was a lot of confusion around the PPP. I mean, you all remember the craziness back in March. It feels like forever ago. It was really only 9-10 months ago. And we didn't know what was going on. We just knew we got this money and we got to apply. And then we heard the big banks were giving away all the loans to the big companies and ignoring the small ones. There was a lot of drama, right? But I'm hoping that there's been lessons learned. And you all know that there's a new stimulus plan that was signed on December 27th. So there's more money. So there's some great news. So two things. There's more money coming around, and it's called the second draw of PPP. So first of all, for those business owners that didn't get around to getting the first PPP, maybe they just weren't ready, they didn't apply, there was definitely money left. So they just, for whatever reason, didn't apply. There's money available in this new draw, in this new round of PPP money. So you will be able to apply. Okay. Secondly,
what are the qualifications? Because I think a lot of people, the problem was that they didn't know all of the steps to take. So is it the same as the last one, or are there different steps now?
Very similar. You're still going to have to go through a bank. You can still take 2.5 times your average month payroll cost. So very similar to the last time. By the way, if you're a solopreneur, there's a lot of people that have, that are sole proprietors that file what's called the Schedule C form, which is part of your federal individual tax form. If you're a solopreneur, you have a sole proprietorship, or you have a single member LLC. So that means you're the only owner of an LLC. You also are eligible. You don't have to have employees. You yourself as the owner are considered an employee for this PPP. So you really, so for the first round, you had to have less than 500 employees. Things are a little different for the second round, so I'll get to that in a minute. But for those that didn't apply, go ahead and apply. Those applications are being worked on now with the SBA. They'll be coming out. You'll probably see information from your bank that says that they're ready to take applications. So you needed to file some personal information. You needed to give some payroll documents. You may need to give your Schedule C from 2019, that form I mentioned, right? And like I said, you're getting 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. And the idea is that you go and apply for forgiveness, and I'll talk about that forgiveness process and how it's changed and evolved for the better as well. But you do need to apply for the forgiveness in order to get it. And the other great news is there's so many things to talk about here. I'm so excited to share all this with you. But the other great news about forgiveness is there were a couple of things that were going on. First of all, that initially what they said was that if you get the PPP loan and you apply for forgiveness and you receive the forgiveness, you don't have to pick up that forgiven loan as income. So you don't have to pay taxes. However, then the IRS came in and said, okay, that's true, but the expenses that you paid using it are not deductible. So ultimately it becomes taxable. Okay. And now here's the good news. In this new stimulus package, they clarified it, and they are very clear in saying you can deduct the expenses that you use with the PPP, and the forgiven PPP is not taxable. So that is a huge win for business owners. So that's wonderful, wonderful news. The other thing I wanted to mention is well, let me get into this first. First, I want to also talk about the PPP for people that have gotten a PPP loan. I mentioned that for those who hadn't gotten one, they're going to have that opportunity. There's some of that $285 billion that's been set aside for PPP has specifically been set aside for the people that didn't get any money in the first round. For those that have used their PPP money or can demonstrate that they're just about done with it, and if they have under 300 employees and can show that there's a 25% drop in revenue in any quarter in 2020 against any quarter in 2019, they can reflect that, and we're not sure exactly what that means. How are they going to reflect it? But you need to be looking at your numbers ultimately, and you need to be able to see that you've had that 25% drop, and you can then qualify again for another PPP loan.
Wow.
So that's
Okay.
great. Yes, wow is right. And in terms of the application process, they're saying it's going to be very similar. They're saying that you can take another 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost for either the prior 12 months before applying or based on your 2019 numbers. So and one more thing really quick, if you're in the accommodations business, we know you've been hit really hard, and they're actually saying that you can take 3.5 times your average monthly payroll cost in PPP money. So that's great news as well.
We're talking with Ruchi Pinniger. You can follow her at Watch Her Prosper, or Watch Her Prosper without the E on Twitter, or watchherprosper.com. The forgiveness, you have to apply. Where do you go to apply for forgiveness?
Yeah, you go through your bank. So on the forgiveness piece, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another really important thing. You go through your bank. There's 3 different applications depending on the size. However, again, another however, because this thing can't be, it has to be confusing. We're dealing with the government, and there's a lot of there's a lot of commotion, and there's a lot of they're reacting because of what business owners went through. They wanted to get money out, but not everything was thought about. They didn't have me on their team, so walk them through all these little issues that small business owners deal with. So I'm waiting for that call still for the next go round. But what I had been telling my clients, and I'm so glad I did, and I'm so glad that they listened, is do not apply. Let's wait to use those 3 forms that had come out. They had initially put out 2 forgiveness application forms. They added a 3rd in the fall that was for the smaller loans. And I said, please wait, because there is something sitting in Congress, and I feel it's going to happen. And that something is that for loans under $150,000, they very much simplified the process. And this is another thing that came out of the stimulus package that just came out at the end of December, which is that if you, as I said, if you have a loan under 150K, you're now going to have a 1-page form and a signed affidavit that you essentially use that money, and you attest that you use that money based on the requirements of the program. And so it's effectively like an automatic forgiveness, but you do have to file the paperwork, and just it's a much more simple process. So that's also a really good piece of news for people.